Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and Marjorie Taylor Greene plays a video that stuns even the most woke of Democrats inside the Doge subcommittee. Let's dive in.
I want to make clear that this hearing is actually not about oversight or Doge, but about spreading hate and using trans lives to distract from the real issues that Americans are facing, from attacks on our economy, to attacks on our democracy, to attacks on our communities. So let's call this hearing what it actually is. It's about bullying trans kids and members of the trans community to distract from the failed policies of the Trump administration, the failed policies and exploitation of this Doge subcommittee, and the GOP's own cruel agenda that is happening right now here on Capitol Hill as they're trying to gut Medicaid, gut food assistance, gut environmental programs to give tax breaks to billionaires, because that is actually what's going on behind these doors all around us. So, as the ranking member of this subcommittee, let me start by saying to everyone in the trans and LGBTQ plus community who might be watching or listening today that we see you, we love you, we respect you, we are fighting for you, and we will fight back against this hateful agenda.
I would like to start by playing a video of why we are here today. So if we can go ahead and play that, please. Where's our digital team? Where's our digital team? Here we go.
Executive order to ban men from playing in women's sports.
That there are only two sexes, male and female, and we are not going to tolerate biological men competing in sports or impeding in private spaces for women like myself or you.
A female fencer was given the ultimate punishment for refusing to compete against a biological man.
At the Portland Interscholastic League Championships, a trans sophomore runner from McDaniel High School.
And Thomas pulling away over the final 150 meters. Thomas wins the NCAA championship.
Men should not be, they're hurting women. They're hurting women very badly. They're hurting women.
I was severely injured in a high school volleyball game by a transgender athlete on the opposing team.
Anyone who disobeys federal law will be either prosecuted, sued, or say goodbye to your federal funding.
I also signed an
Female athletes should never be forced to compete against mentally ill biological men who parade around in women's clothes. But we'll hear from witnesses today who had to face off against biological male competitors. This led one to suffer a life-altering physical injury from a volleyball spike to her head. The other was thrown out of a recent fencing competition for refusing to compete against a man. Why is this happening when we have federal laws on the books intended to foster women's sports? A New York Times Ipsos poll this past January found 94% of Republicans, 67% of Democrats, and 64% of independents agree. Keep men out of women's sports. Americans also reelected President Trump in November, and he spoke on their behalf in February when he issued his executive order keeping men out of women's sports. The United States is hosting the Summer Games in Los Angeles in 2028. It's a great time for us to once again take the lead in protecting and preserving the ability of women to engage in safe, fair athletic competition by keeping biological men out of women's sports. A United Nations report issued last August, most noted female athletes worldwide have lost out on numerous medal opportunities. Due to policies allowing males to compete in the women's category, more than 600 female athletes in more than 400 competitions have lost more than 890 medals in 29 different sports. I don't want any more women missing out on medal opportunities, avoiding athletic competitions, or missing out on college scholarships. And I don't want to see any more girls or women getting hurt.
I wish that was the topic. I wish we were actually talking about what are the lines. I wish we were able to have a discussion on this matter, because it should be pretty easy that most people would naturally agree that the two rules, if you're in the T part of the LGBT community, don't compete in women's sports, no men in women's sports. It's as easy as that. And don't push the narrative on kids. Once they're 18, different story altogether. You're legally an adult. Do what makes you happy. Just don't break either of those two rules. But sadly, this is not where the debate is. We can't even have a conversation with people like Melanie Stansberry, who's out there grandstanding, is out there virtue signaling as best she possibly can, and saying that we love you and we hear you. I don't want to be loved and heard. Okay? That's not what I want out of my life. That'd be great. But the kind of love that I would want is not one where someone says, oh, well, I care about you. No, can I randomly call on you for a favor later on down the road because you show that you respect me and respect the time, etc.? Democrats don't even know what love is. They've forgotten it because they take it for granted so often. We should be talking about where love would actually take you. I think that's something that has been lost in our society to some degree. And even the American church, and particularly us Protestants, don't do a good job of preaching of what that actually looks like. We really don't. And we cede that space to the left every single time. So we're actually having to have a different conversation entirely. And it goes back to the Italian Marxist Gramsci. Right? And I'm going to be completely honest, I had almost forgotten about this person, but yet this is the man who is arguably the origin of woke in the Western world. His theory was you can't have the communist revolution unless you have an ideology that slowly tears the very fabric of your society apart and allows for the communist mindset to truly move in and take over. You cannot do this by force of arms. It must be done by force of minds. Hey, y'all. Experts say they rig the markets, print the money, and manipulate the system. But here's the truth. They can't print gold. While the dollar weakens, physical gold and silver stay real, tangible, uncontrolled. When banks go digital and emergencies lock you out of your own funds, gold and silver won't need an internet connection or government permission. Their value is outside the system, a time-tested insurance policy against tyranny, inflation, and economic resets. So don't wait until the trap is sprung. Own what the elites hoard behind closed doors. Physical gold and silver off the grid, because when the system fails, real money talks. And to help you learn more about owning physical gold and silver, we have partnered with the great company Goldco, which supports this channel, which we deeply appreciate. So check out politibralgold.com for more info and see if you might even qualify for free silver. That's politibralgold.com. And I'm not talking about mines of battling it out in these great courtroom dramas. Ironically, as of today's filming, I think this is the anniversary of the Scopes Monkey trial, which became one of my favorite plays and movies, Inherit the Wind, even though it was technically about communism, which I won't get sidetracked on that nonsense. But the other kind of communistic nonsense I'm talking about is the idea that you have to slowly march your way through the institutions. I used to think that was something out of Mao Zedong's ideology, when reality is it's only the long march because of the march that he took through the mountains in order to save his last bastion of communistic forces. Man, history is going to look back on Chiang Kai-shek and just go, really? You couldn't finish the job? Regardless of that, the whole point of this conversation is to point out how this idea of moving your way through the institution, slowly taking your time and getting generation by generation to remove sort of the veil of what I call the veil of ridiculous. Ultimately, you see something as ridiculous, well, you put a veil over your eyes, you don't see it anymore. You can still function, but as those veils get slowly removed and the ridiculous comes closer, you start accepting that more. That's not good. We need to understand that there are certain lines that need to be drawn. The whole point and purpose of protecting women's sports is because men have more muscle mass, we have faster reflexes, our hand-eye coordination is better, our eyesight moves even faster. Basically, even the Serena Williams sisters, Serena and Venus, would admit that they might get beat by the 200 or even 500th ranked tennis player. They know in their heart of hearts they can't compete. That does not make them less of athletes. They are elite or were elite in their own group, and they deserve to have their own opportunities. They don't deserve to have that taken away by someone who is male. That's just not fair. But because of the Marxist ideologies, because of Gramsci's belief that you slowly rot away the cultural institutions and capture it one at a time until you eventually capture everything. They've even gotten as far as they've captured some of the top brass in the military. And by the way, a big shout out to Nick Freitas, his fantastic channel. I've been watching this video for the past couple of days. The most dangerous Marxists you never heard of. And that's where I'm getting a lot of this information, mainly because I had almost forgotten about him. I had almost forgotten about Gramsci. That whole ideology makes him sort of the father or grandfather of the woke movement. And ultimately, it has gotten to a point in America where we have accepted his ridiculous premise in order to break society to a point where we will willingly accept the wonderful communist utopia. Well, folks, they pushed a little too far. They have gone a little too fast, a little too quickly, and now there are young conservatives out there who have realized that maybe most of the 20th century was a mistake. And I'm talking about the rise of different forms of Marxism. I'm talking about the rise of certain forms of fascism. And of course, what happened in that fateful day in 1917 when the Germans allowed Vladimir Lenin to return to Russia. I think that's the real reason they got punished after World War I. But anyways, I think the rules should be clear and should be obvious. You don't push a narrative onto children. You let them decide for themselves as adults. And you don't put men in women's sports. That should be non-negotiable. That should be common sense. But people like Melanie Stansberry don't want that, because they, in their heart of hearts, believe in the utopian ideals, even if they would not admit that they themselves are communists. They are, as Lenin would say, useful idiots. And Marjorie Taylor Greene just played a video that should make them reconsider everything about their ideology. Then and only then can the Democrats start to fully understand that if they don't return back to the center anytime soon, they're not going to be a party at all. Not that I would weep for them, and neither should you. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politbrawl. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. Until then, y'all have a good one.